What is going on, guys? My name is Sena and welcome back to another video. I've missed you guys and I hope that you are all doing well today. In this video, I'm going to be talking to you guys and explaining 5 tips that every beginner needs to know in Valorant. I remember when I first started playing Valorant, I was new to PC FPS games, so I didn't really know much about anything and I had to learn everything on my own. These are some tips that really would have helped me if I thought about them or if I knew about this information when starting out. Now, if you are an experienced player or you already have put a lot of time into the game, still stick around and watch this video because these tips will be helpful for you as well. These are some topics that I really haven't talked a whole lot about on the channel, and I think that they're really important that I address these tips in this video. Right before we get into the video though, guys, I want to take a moment to introduce you and thank Valorant Tracker for sponsoring this video. Valorant Tracker is a companion tool used by millions of players to track your in-game stats and progress. You can look at your KD, win percentage, headshot percentage, win rate on certain maps, headshot percentage with certain guns, and much more. If you've been playing Valorant for a long time, after you download Valorant Tracker, you can go back and look at your old stats and see how much you've improved as a player. You can see your stats from each act and compare them to one another. Not only this, but there's a huge library of lineups and guides for every single agent in the game that is constantly being updated. Now, you're probably thinking that an app like this probably costs a monthly fee or it's pretty expensive, but Valorant Tracker is actually 100% free to download and use, and you don't have to pay a single penny to get access to all of these awesome tools. So what are you waiting for? Go down in the description or in the pinned comment and click my link to download Valorant Tracker today. Thank you again to Valorant Tracker for sponsoring this video, and with all of that being said, guys, let's get right into the video. Valorant can be a very complicated game. Similar to chess, the parameters of the game are simple, but when you really get into it, there's a lot of complex strategy underneath. A lot of this underlying complexity is difficult to grasp at first, but it is necessary to understand if we want to improve. The first tip that I have for you guys for improving at Valorant is to always fight for neutral space. Neutral space is an area on the map that is not given to the defenders nor the attackers and must be fought for mid-round. The easiest example that I can show you guys for this is on Ascent. On Ascent, these areas here that are circled in blue are defender areas. This is territory that is given to the defenders, and this is the area that they claim when the round begins. Now, the areas in red is the attacker area, and this is what the attackers are given to work with off spawn. All the area in between the defender and attacker area is neutral space. This neutral space needs to be claimed by one of the sides, and these are the areas that the first fights in the round usually start. Generally speaking, the team with more control of space over the map is the team that wins the round. This is especially true for maps that have a lot of neutral space, for example, Fracture. It's important that at the start of the round on Fracture, you and your team are actively fighting for neutral space and not just sitting on site. A mistake that a lot of beginners will make is they'll just sit in tower or just sit on site and wait for the enemies to rush into them. It's okay to do this if you're playing a sentinel/anchor role, but if you're a duelist, initiator, or anything else, you really need to be fighting for space on this map. A common technique for taking space arcade is having Breach play behind Generator, stunning this entire lane, and then having Jet dash up on the enemies with someone else and claiming this area. If no one is there, perfect. Having this map control is huge for your team and gives you a massive advantage in the round. This now gives you information by limiting the amount of areas that the attackers could be, while also giving you the jump on them if you decide to push dish or go underneath. And this is just one example. A lot of new players have this misconception that defenders need to just camp on site and wait for the attackers to rush in, while doing this actually grants your team a massive disadvantage. This doesn't only apply to Fracture either. Even on Ascent, I'm always fighting for mid, always fighting for A main, always fighting for B main, always fighting for that neutral space because we want to claim it. We want there to be as much stuff that the enemies need to re-clear before they can take site, not only to waste time, but to also apply pressure. Knowing this when I first started playing Valorant would have made it so much easier because I used to play so scared and I used to be such a beta with my playstyle, but now that I understand understand the game a little bit more, I'm much more aggressive and understand how the game works. Hopefully that all made sense and you guys understand what I'm talking about, but neutral space is super important to claim. Moving on from this, the second tip that I wish that I knew when I first started playing Valorant is to not misuse or haphazardly throw my utility. I've mentioned utility usage in a plethora of my other videos, but I think it's so important that you understand how to properly use the utility for your agent. One example of this I see a lot is Sova players or Fade players will immediately throw their dart or their haunt at the start of the round to get information. While this does seem beneficial at first, it's actually a lot better to save that utility for a retake rather than burning it at the start of the round. If the enemies are grouped up and are about to hit the site that you're on, they'll make that known and you can get that information without having to burn one of the most valuable pieces of utility that you have. Instead of darting long on C Haven, for example, just wait for the attackers to push up by jump spotting. Once you see them and you want to play for retake, you can use that dart and that utility to retake the site rather than getting information that you already would have had anyways at the start of the round. And this is just one example. Another way that people misuse their utility is when Jett players burn their dash without creating any space with it. The primary function of Jett and Jett's dash is to create space and create a threat. A lot of players will burn this dash rather instead of taking sight with it or entering out on site with it, they'll use it to scale up an area of the map that already is claimed. Or a lot of times they'll take a meaningless fight that doesn't need to be taken and then use the dash to get away, which is a waste of utility. Everything you do with your utility must have a purpose. And every time you use your util, ask yourself, did that utility do something? Did that utility serve a purpose for our team? If you're playing Brimstone and you throw a Molly CT during post plant, that utility is stalling them, in turn giving you time, and that is a good use of utility. Saving it for post plant if you have lineups as well is a good use of utility. Every piece of util that you have should serve a purpose during the round, and if you're throwing util and it's not serving that purpose, you need to learn how to fix that. Again, I really struggled with utility usage when I first started playing Valorant because I didn't really understand where and when I was supposed to use it. By putting more time into the game and getting more experience playing with better players and watching better players, I understood better how this utility should be used to get the most value out of it, in turn granting you the biggest advantage in the round. This tip goes hand in hand with tip 1, which is claiming neutral space, because a lot of good utility usage will help you clear out those neutral spaces. It's almost impossible to fight for neutral space without utility, and it's really important that you're using that utility alongside your team to coordinate a good push. All right, moving on from this, let's talk about tip 3, which is calming or using your mic. I always tell players to use their mic and calm, and you must do this even if no one else on your team is talking. Nothing is more frustrating than queuing into a ranked game to get 4 headless chickens on your team that don't know how to use their mic. When no one is calming or using their mic, first of all, there's no call out, so the information is going to be very limited, but not only that, but also strats are not going to be called, so it's going to be really difficult to work alongside your teammates without actually talking to each other. So even if nobody on your team is talking, I think it's really important that you still talk and give your team call outs, or just talk to your team and be like, hey, Breach, can we push this together? Or hey, Jett, I'm going to flash this. Could you dash through? We could fight for this, or just something like that. Because if you don't, you're basically just playing team deathmatch and you have dice that you're rolling hoping that you win the round. Valorant is a team-based game. I tell you guys this in every video, and if you aren't working together with your teammates, it's going to be very difficult to secure rounds, especially in those lower ranks that a lot of you guys might be having a tough time getting out of. If you work with your team and coordinate team play in those lobbies, you're going to be destroying the enemy team because there's hardly any team play a lot of the times in those ranks. Pushing with your teammates and making sure that you are in a tradable distance with your teammates, so if they go down, you can trade them out, is very important. And also, don't bait your team. I've talked about this in multiple different videos, but I think it's really important that you calm and use your mic to coordinate team play. Moving on from this, the 4th tip that I want to give you guys for improving at Valorant is to not underplay. You guys might have heard me talk about overplaying in some of my other videos where you just spam queue games over and over and over again, but this is a double-edged sword because you also don't want to underplay. I hear it way too many times where people are like, oh, I'm stuck in bronze, I'm stuck in silver, I can't get out, and I look at their Valorant tracker and they've played 5 games this season. You guys have to understand that if you want to rank up, you have to put a decent amount of time into the game. Playing 3 games of ranked a week is not going to be enough to see actual improvement and see yourself rank up. I understand that people are busy, people have busy lives, they have things they have to do. Also, ranked anxiety plays a lot into this. They don't want to queue ranked alone and such. But it's really important that you guys put a substantial amount of time into the game to see big improvements. And I'm not saying that you guys should be no-lifing the game or anything like that. I'm just saying that you guys should put in a substantial amount of time. When I first started playing Valorant and I was silver and gold, I feel like I was barely even playing compared to now. I was putting such little time into the game and expecting to see big results, which never works. Once I started actually grinding and putting a lot of hours into the game, it was crazy how fast I was ranking up and improving. I think it's more important to be consistent with your playing rather than spam queuing and overplaying like I've talked about in other videos, but this really does depend on your schedule. A lot of people can only play on the weekends or they can only play for a couple hours, and that's okay. Just make sure that you guys are putting in the time when you can. And moving on, the 5th and final tip for improving at Valorant is going to be not being predictable. There is a saying used by a lot of experienced martial artists that goes, create patterns and then break them. By creating a pattern, you are conditioning your enemies to a play style, and once you break that pattern, you will catch them off guard. This simple yet extremely useful concept applies in Valorant as well. Making sure that you are not being too predictable is important. If you're solo lurking B at the start of every single round, trust me, your enemies will catch onto that and they will punish you for it. I know this because I am always actively trying to find patterns in my enemy's gameplay to then punish them. If I notice that one person frequently lurks, I'm always getting ready for that lurk to come through. This is why it's really important that when you're fighting for neutral space, you are doing it with teammates, because if you do it alone, you will get punished for this if they find out that you're doing it every round. When I first started playing Valorant, I played Cypher a lot, and I found one really good setup that I liked, and I would do that Cypher setup for the entire game. The problem with that is once they find those trips, the setup kind of becomes useless because they know where your setup is. Now I'm constantly switching between playing A and B. Sometimes I'll set up mid, I'll throw my camera in different locations, and I'm always staying unpredictable, trying to catch my enemies off guard. This is something that newer players are not very good at identifying, and it's something that you can easily abuse in players that aren't really keen on these details. You'll notice that in Valorant, a lot of people like to copy others' body language. If one person tries to rotate, the whole team will rotate with them. If one person starts pushing in, the team will push in with them. Players will copy other players' body language. It's built into our nature as humans, and it's something that we just do. It's important to think critically and assess the situation and see if the play that you're making is actually good or not. A lot of players will go on autopilot and do the same thing every round, for example, rushing A, and the rest of the team will just brainlessly follow along because we like to copy body language, and a lot of people don't like to stand up and be like, hey guys, this isn't working, let's do something else. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, this is a huge problem in the lower ranks, and even in the higher ranks as well, people do this a lot. So remember guys, make sure that you are always being unpredictable and you are thinking critically about each situation and trying to find the best solution. And I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. In this video, I gave you guys 5 tips that I wish I knew when I first started playing Valorant. If you're new to Valorant, welcome. It's an amazing, fun game to play, but it's also very complicated and can get frustrating at times. That's why I enjoy making these guides for you so that I can be the person that I wish I had when I first started playing and wanting to see myself improve. Remember that I'm not a perfect player and I'm striving to improve every day, and I'm constantly grinding. You must understand that we're all striving to improve together, and we're all on our own grind, moving at our own pace, so make sure that you guys never give up on your dreams. If you guys did enjoy this video or found it helpful, don't forget to drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Make sure you guys go follow me on Twitter, links down in the description below, and make sure you guys go join my my Discord server. I have that also linked in the description. We have a super chill community over there. We'd love to have you. Check out last week's video. I made a tier list of every agent in the game. So if you're a beginner as well, you might want to check that video out as well. Thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day or night to watch this video, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.